Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Thursday, March the 27th, 2025. At the end of a week, Neptune moves into Aries, and in this video I want to consider what this might mean. It's a big event, and I'm going to discuss its likely impact, both in terms of us as individuals and also the world at large. But before I look at Neptune in Aries, I want to look at the astrology and the I Ching for today, which is Thursday, March the 27th, 2025. And if you do happen to like this video, feel free to indeed like it. And if you're not subscribed, I would be happy to have you as a subscriber because it does make a difference to the channel. So here is the positions of the planets today, Thursday, March 27th at noon in New York. And the moon is in Pisces. And in Pisces, it makes a square aspect to Jupiter. There is Jupiter in Gemini. So with the moon in Pisces, we have a situation where things are fairly emotional. After all, Pisces is a water sign. It does emphasize, the way we feel, and also Venus is actually now in Pisces as well. So there is going to be a certain emphasis on feelings, and that may contrast with the moon in Aquarius. So recently we had the moon in Aquarius, and that perhaps was more about ideas, but now with the moon in Pisces we need to tune into our feelings, but we mustn't take things too far. Moon is square Jupiter. When you've got moon square Jupiter, it can be a little bit excessive. There's a certain tendency to exaggerate, to blow things out of proportion, to get over emotional. Also, there's a clash potentially between moon in Pisces, Pisces being in a water sign, being something emotional, and Jupiter in Gemini. So Jupiter in Gemini is about ideas, maybe, and about thinking things through, and also trying to get the right perspective on what we're picking up with our cognition. It can sometimes be very difficult to get the right perspective with Jupiter in Gemini. Jupiter in Gemini is a planet which is about the big picture, about big concepts, and then it's in Gemini. Gemini is often about small facts, small details, and we can use all this power of Jupiter and then focus it on something that is really small, too small, and then you throw in moon square Jupiter, and then everything can get out of hand and people can get upset about things that are really not worth getting upset about. So that's the moon. Now that moon square Jupiter, you could say it's a fairly minor aspect. It doesn't really figure as one of those super powerful events. But today there aren't actually very many major aspects, and so that moon square Jupiter may become more important than it actually is. It may even in certain cases define what the day is like. And we also have Venus still retrograde, moving backwards into Pisces. Now, normally when you think about a planet going retrograde, you're thinking, well, that's not so good. Venus, you'd want Venus, the planet of relationships, to be moving forward. But Venus was in Aries, and Venus was in its detriment in Aries, and it was rather close to the sun, and so it's actually a bit of a relief for Venus to be in Pisces, even though Venus actually makes a conjunction to conjunction to Neptune. That is quite confusing, but the point is Venus is in the sign of its exaltation. By the way, as far as when that sign change actually happened, sign change happened at sort of 8:41 London time, so that would be sort of very, very early in the morning if you're in the Americas. By the time you get up on Thursday, the Venus will be in Aries. If you're in Australia or New Zealand, then Venus will move into Pisces, later in the day, sort of probably late afternoon, early evening. Could be mid-evening if you're in New Zealand. So that is something that is happening, and as I said, I think it is something we should be happy about. Venus moving into Pisces. Venus is the planet of relationships, and when it's in Pisces, it is indeed able to relate, and it's in a water sign, so that's good. Okay, Venus is making a conjunction to Neptune, and that conjunction to Neptune is taking place on Skeet. So Skeet is, of course, the planet of disasters, particularly disasters relating to water and the sea. Now, I don't think in most cases that Venus conjunct Neptune is going to affect us personally, though I always say when these things happen, watch out for your plumbing. I know it sounds rather boring, but anything to do with water with Venus conjunct Neptune should probably be avoided. And, unnecessary boat trips, especially in small crafts, should be avoided. But it's going to be more about disasters that, are in the news, or could be flooding, a lot of rain. So, Venus conjunct Neptune, I think, is on a personal level, okay, we might be too trusting. Venus conjunct Neptune, that's one way of looking at it. We might allow ourselves to be deceived. But on the other hand, it is quite warm and sensitive. On a more collective level, then Venus conjunct Neptune might be more difficult, and that's about it. There's not a great deal going on today aside from what I've just talked about. Though Venus moving into Pisces is in itself a big event, as is Venus conjunct Neptune. So that's the picture for New York. We can set the chart up for Sydney, Australia. And at noon in Sydney, the moon is at around 3 degrees Pisces, and this chart is, of course, representative of Australasia. I think the moon goes into Pisces at 6:32 a.m. in Sydney, which would, I believe, be 8:32 a.m. in New Zealand. And there's not a huge amount of difference between what's going on in New York and what's going on in Australasia, though the moon doesn't make a square to Jupiter, not really. That moon square Jupiter is more about tomorrow. And if you are in Australasia, you might find that today there isn't a great deal happening because the moon doesn't apply to anything. It doesn't actually get to that square to Jupiter. And, I talked about Venus moving into Pisces. Well, again, you can see at noon in Sydney, Venus is at 0 degrees 11 Aries. So it's not until this afternoon that Venus makes it into Pisces. So there is a little bit of a difference. And turning to the heliocentric view, putting the Sun at the center of the solar system, the conjunction between the Earth, Venus, and Mercury is kind of still there, but you can see that it's starting to break up. Though I would have said Venus is still on the Earth-Mercury midpoint. So heliocentrically, Venus is quite well placed, and it picks up on that Earth and Mercury, and that's perhaps how we can communicate, and maybe we can communicate in a way that is quite effective and is also sensitive. And that chimes with the fact that Venus is in Pisces geocentrically. So I think that there is something to be quite happy about with the heliocentric viewpoint. It does indicate that we're able to get on with people, certainly if we make the effort. And having looked at the heliocentric picture, I want to consider today from the perspective of the 12 signs. So these are my forecasts for the 12 signs for today, which is Thursday, March 27th, 2025. Aries. Aries, things are changing. You thought that you were at the center of things. It felt like that. And you were ready for the next move. And now you're starting to have second thoughts. Things might not be quite as clear as you thought they were. And also, you might be a little bit confused by some people's behavior. And one reason for this is that Venus is moving out of your sign. Venus has been in Aries for some time, and it felt that the Aries season was, well and truly underway. But now with Venus moving back into Pisces, you may lose a little bit of your power, especially when it comes to being persuasive and having people on your side. It might be that you have to accept that you have to do some things on your own, or maybe without quite so much support. Additionally, we've got the moon moving into Pisces, and with the moon moving into Pisces from an Aries perspective, that does give a further indication that things need to slow down a little bit, and you can't be quite as dramatic as you had been over the last couple of days. You have to be more considered, and not everything has to be out into the open. And there still seem to be things you would like to say, you would like to communicate, and being an impulsive Aries, you might be just ready to go, and you have got things on your mind that you want to tell people about. But with Moon square Jupiter, it might not work. You might find that your words just don't get the right response, or you might actually find yourself saying too much. And it's very easy at the moment to say too much, because it's like you're saying as much as you were yesterday, or as little as you were yesterday, but now it occurs to you that there are certain things that really shouldn't be revealed. And so, Aries, I would suggest that you try to be a little bit more considered as far as what you say. You don't have to be open and honest, and you only should say something if it's really important. If you feel that something absolutely has to be said and there is a moral imperative, then fine. But in most cases, you should probably reduce the volume and also reduce the content. And then there's a question of, what actually should you be doing? What should today be about? Today should be about concentrating on your individuality, on doing things for yourself, not feeling that you need to tell people what you're doing, not feeling that you need any recognition. And there may be private projects that you can work on, and you can actually feel a great sense of accomplishment. Just doing something you enjoy, doing something you're good at, and really other people shouldn't matter. And, finishing with relationships, I must emphasize that Venus is leaving your sign, and that can manifest in a number of ways. It can be about relationships, because Venus leaving your sign may be about another person, perhaps a partner, just feeling that they're just becoming a little more distant. They might be leaving the scene, and it could be about someone you know quite well who you are starting to lose touch with. You will get back in touch with them at some stage. I mean, Venus moves into Pisces, but it will turn direct. Venus will eventually move back into Aries. So if you do feel that you're losing touch with someone, that they're becoming more distant, I wouldn't worry about it too much, because it's just a temporary state of affairs. Taurus, the emphasis today is very much on Venus, which is your ruler, and Venus is doing things. Specifically, Venus is moving out of Aries and into Pisces. And Taurus, I think that this is something you should be welcoming. So if you have been listening to my videos recently, you might have noticed that I have suggested that you might be under a lot of pressure because Venus was in such a bad position. Venus was conjunct the Sun, it was in Aries. Aries is a sign of its detriment, and it was retrograde. Well, Venus is still retrograde, but it's moving away from the Sun. And furthermore, it's moving out of Aries into Pisces. So that is an important sign change for Venus, because Venus in Aries, sign of its detriment, not working well, moving into Pisces, a sign of its exaltation. Venus is strong in Pisces. And so overall, your position is improving, and it may actually be quite a dramatic improvement, though to begin with you might not realize. You might be of the opinion, well, it's the same situation, you haven't seen any big differences, but you see the big differences as soon as you start interacting, as soon as you start trying to make things happen, perhaps as soon as you start talking to people, expressing yourself. As soon as you do that, I think you should notice that something really has changed, that you are more effective and you find it easier to deal with other people. And, with Venus moving into Pisces, you're more sympathetic, and you're at an emotional level, you're more fine-tuned, and it's just easier to pick up on how people feel and also be able to express how you feel. So in terms of relationships and your social life, Venus moving into Pisces has got to make things better. And so, take advantage of this. And if something hadn't worked out recently, especially on a social level, give it another go. And you might find that people are more receptive to your charms. Additionally, Venus is conjunct Neptune. Now, Venus conjunct Neptune could make you over-emotional, oversensitive, but that's just the negative way of looking at it. Venus conjunct Neptune might give you a sensitivity that in the recent past you have been missing. And Neptune is a planet that's often connected with the spiritual and the religious. And so from a spiritual point of view, you may feel that there's more going on. You may feel more aware of higher level forces, and this might also be reflected in other people and how other people are responding to you. And so if you have recently felt that the spiritual side of things had been missing and things were a bit sort of bare and mechanistic, then with Neptune moving into Pisces, there's certainly reason to be optimistic. And additionally, with this conjunction between Venus and Neptune, you're able to pick up on what's happening around you on a cosmic and global level. Just open your heart, listen to your feelings, and you actually have a much better understanding of what's happening in the world. And okay, it might also be an understanding of how the world is suffering, but you are in tune with it all. And because you are in tune, and because you've lost your rough edges, you did have a few rough edges, but those rough edges are beginning to disappear now rapidly. Yeah, it allows you to go to places which perhaps in the past you just weren't able to go to. Maybe you weren't accepted or you didn't feel comfortable, but you are now feeling a lot more comfortable, and your ability to make new connections is certainly improving very fast. And it's not really a day to be shy. Try people out, see what people have got to offer, and you might really get a surprise, a pleasant surprise, when you try to interact with other people. Gemini, Moon is moving through Pisces, and Moon moving through Pisces from a Gemini perspective is quite a good thing. It's a placement, Moon in Pisces, which for you, Gemini, is about your ambitions and what you'd like to achieve and how you would like to present yourself. And you shouldn't really hold back. If there's something you want to do and if there's something you want to achieve, Gemini, then you should go for it. And it might be a day when hard work can be rewarded. And do not limit yourself, especially as the Moon is making a square to Jupiter. So this square between the Moon and Jupiter is in angular signs. I mean, angular from a Gemini perspective. You've got Jupiter in your sign in Gemini, the Moon moving through Pisces, which corresponds to the 10th house in a Gemini chart. Of course, the 10th house is about career and success and status. So Moon square Gemini, don't be afraid of, Moon square Jupiter in Gemini. Don't be afraid of taking things a little bit too far. Sometimes it's okay to be ever so slightly excessive. If you've got a reason, if something needs to be done, if you need to make a splash for a reason, then you can certainly do it. And actually, there's no harm in being over ambitious. Of course, you've got to know your limits, but your limits may go further than you'd imagined. And additionally, Gemini, there is a feeling today that you have to turn theory into practice. Geminis are very good at theory. And, over the last couple of days, you've had lots of ideas. There have been lots of possibilities have made themselves felt. And now you've got to ground it all. And that is something, Gemini, which I really do think that you can do. Now, while you're going about things over the course of the day, you do have to consider the human dimension. And sometimes Geminis can be a little bit insensitive, even when the Moon is in Pisces. And there is a feeling, Gemini, that you might be a little bit transactional over the course of the day. You might ask yourself, how can another person benefit you? And this is something Geminis do. Not always, but they can sort of objectify another person, ask themselves, well, what's this person for? What are they doing for me? Am I benefiting from this relationship? And so Gemini, it's okay to take this transactional approach because it's natural. I mean, we all do it regardless of our sign. But you don't want to take it too far. You've got to try to show a little bit of subtlety and give the impression that you're not desperately looking for something from someone, that you're trying to benefit perhaps in a material way, and you might want to limit certain relationships so that you get maximum benefit. So that could be an approach. And even if you don't have that approach, if you try your hardest to get on with other people, even if you've got an incredibly sympathetic heart, you're trying your best, you might still feel that something is missing. You try to get close to people and you can't do it. So Gemini, I would suggest that you don't put too much emphasis on relationships. By all means, ask yourself how you can benefit from another person. But if you spend too much time dealing with other people, there just might be something completely unsatisfactory about it. If you're having a transactional approach, then other people might pick up on the fact that you have a transactional approach, and that's not going to be good for the long term. So don't spend too much time with other people just for the sake of it. If you need to be with people and you've got a reason for it, fair enough, provided you make some effort not to reveal any transactional attitude you might have. But overall, the social sense of things may feel somewhat lacking. And finally, Venus is moving into Pisces. And with Venus moving into Pisces, Pisces is a high-profile sign. And I've just said that other people should be treated with a degree of caution, because I'm not quite sure how relations with them are going to work out. But Venus moving into Pisces may actually make you quite self-conscious. You become aware of how you are presenting yourself, and what you wear, what you say, what you look like could have an impact on you. And that's fine. And at the moment, many Geminis may want to be ill-defined. Now, that might sound a bit strange. By ill-defined, I think that you understand that the way you present yourself does matter, but also you don't want anyone to draw conclusions about you. And you don't really want to give any clues about who you are and what you want. And so, think carefully about how you present yourself, even how you dress. You don't want to make it too clear, and a little bit of confusion and ambiguity in your overall style might be beneficial. Cancer. The moon is moving through Pisces, and as the moon moves through Pisces, it makes a square to Jupiter. And with the moon in Pisces, you are pretty open-minded. You're thinking about all the things that are possible, and you don't want to limit yourself, and make clear decisions. I mean, that is a problem with making decisions, because once you make a decision, straight away some of your options do get closed. And right now, in the run up to the new moon. We do have a new moon quite soon. I think the new moon is on, I think it's on Saturday, isn't it, March the 29th? And you're starting to feel it. The lunar cycle is coming to a close, but as the lunar cycle comes to its end, as the moon moves through Pisces, then there's still stuff that needs to be discovered. And you really need to be as open-minded as possible. And even if something doesn't sound realistic or it seems far-fetched, at least listen, give it a go. And then the moon makes a square to Jupiter. And that moon square Jupiter could be a bit of a challenge, because with moon square Jupiter, you're being challenged to take something further. And maybe there's a temptation to exaggerate and to treat something as being more serious than it actually is. And this is a reminder, Cancer, that in many ways it's a time for collecting information, for getting new impressions. And you've got to keep moving. What you don't want to do is come across something, find it to be disturbing. Well, it could be very attractive, but to the point where you stop what you're doing and you spend a lot of time on something, and as a result you miss other opportunities. So nothing needs to be exaggerated at the moment. Nothing is of supreme significance. Now, later on, as you move into the new moon, when the moon moves into Aries, now that won't be for a day or two, when the moon moves into Aries, that will be different. Then you can start to make decisions. But at the moment, try to be a little flexible, open-minded, and you're still in a process of discovery. And another thing going on is that Venus is moving out of Aries and into Pisces. And from a Cancerian perspective, Venus moving into Pisces is pleasant. It allows you to be quite sympathetic, and you can deal with other people in a sort of fairly pleasant way. And also there may be some people who can offer you something new, a different perspective, yes, and you can't expect to understand anyone completely straight away. So if you find someone perplexing, especially if they're someone new, don't worry about it, because it's good to have mysteries. It's good to have people around who continue to have something to offer. You don't want to be in a situation where you completely understand everyone, because then it becomes boring. And so give people a chance to enlighten you. In the end, you might realize that they've got nothing to offer. That's possible, but you've got to give people a chance. That really is important. Leo, your mind is going in different ways, in different directions, and there are a few things that you're not prepared to think about, and indeed a few things that you're not prepared to discuss. So it's good, Leo, that you're prepared to go in lots of different directions, and that you don't reject something because it seems difficult or unpleasant. But it is possible to go too far, to go into areas that other people don't want to deal with, and ultimately that you don't want to deal with. And you therefore have to be a little bit careful about what you say and the subjects you bring up. It might seem completely normal to you, but it might not seem quite so normal to other people. And if you are doing any research or you're trying to find things out, then if you're sufficiently hardworking, you might run into things that you don't appreciate. the truth can be very difficult. And if you really want to find the truth, you have to be ready for anything. And that would mean that if you are asking questions, however you're asking questions, you might want to ask people direct questions, or you might, be doing some research. But if you're asking questions, then you have got to be genuinely open-minded about the kind of response you get, because the response you get may not be entirely to your liking. And the intensity of the day, and I do think in some respects it can be an intense day. The intensity of the day is supported by the fact that the moon is moving through Pisces. Pisces is a sign that is quite deep, intense, and emotional, at least from your perspective. And you can get into things, very deeply. And this is not usually the Leo way, but sometimes you just have to do it. Leo is a sunny sign. It is about the sun. It's about the daylight, and having to work in the shadows, away from a public eye, can sometimes feel difficult, even unnatural. But there's a time for everything, and now is that time. And if you can really get to grips with what is happening under the surface, and then in the end you will benefit, and you'll be well informed, and you'll be better able to just to deal with the various challenges that are coming your way. And also, Leo, if you happen to be working, or if you're looking for a job, or if getting jobs is important to you, then I do think that things are improving. And it has a lot to do with your understanding. You understand things and people. You understand the people you have to work for, the people you're working with. You start to really get who they are and what they're about. And you get emotional information. It's coming your way. And you see the picture, and you see where it's all going to lead. Now, there is a question of whether or not you're able to accept that. Now, things could be leading in a favourable direction. They could be leading in a not so favourable direction, potentially in a disastrous direction. I'm not saying, by the way, that it is going to move in a disastrous direction, but the facts of the matter are available to you. And as I've said at the beginning, you're able to ask the right questions. And so, Leo, the truth is available. It's available in its entirety. And the question is today, do you actually want to know the truth? And I think in the long run, it's best to be well informed. Virgo. The moon is very much in Pisces, and under normal circumstances, when the moon is in Pisces, you would expect relationships to be highlighted. You have to deal with other people, and other people are perhaps having more influence than usual. And additionally, we've got Venus moving into Pisces. So, with Venus moving into Pisces, that really does emphasize other people, that, other people can't be avoided. And Venus is conjunct Neptune. So Venus conjunct Neptune, other people have to be worked out. It may be actually quite difficult to really understand who people are. It's easy to be distracted. As a Virgo, you like to concentrate on surface appearances, how people appear, and reach conclusions in that way. But surface appearances may not tell you very much, not just because Venus is conjunct Neptune, but also because we don't have very much Earth in the sky. We've just got Uranus in Taurus. So there is the possibility there, Virgo, of being deceived, of thinking you know the answer, and actually you don't know the answer, and so you shouldn't necessarily believe what people tell you. So it does seem, at least to begin with, that relationships and other people could be important, but need it be like that? I do think that if you put too much emphasis on the social side of things, you might actually be disappointed. Your inclination is to let other people have their say, to give other people a chance. And, in a general sense, it's probably the right thing to be doing. But today, somehow you have to keep your distance. You have to be there. You have to be responsive to other people. But that doesn't mean to say that you need to trust or rely on other people. And if you do try to get too close to anyone, you may feel that you yourself are holding something back, and that you're not able to give everything, and you might come over as actually being quite a difficult person in spite of your best efforts. So, Virgo, I think it's important that you keep something of a distance, at least to begin with. And when we look at your ruler, Mercury, Mercury is, it's true, about to go into Pisces, and I think that Mercury moving into Pisces is going to really give a boost to your social life, but it's not in Pisces yet. It's still in Aries. It's still conjunct the Sun. Of course, Mercury is retrograde and conjunct the Sun. And at the moment, Virgo, you really need a bit of detachment and distance, and you have to appreciate your own sensitivity. And getting too close to other people, even if you really like them, you really care about them, just may not be the right time. But tomorrow is a different day, and Mercury will, in the end, move into Pisces. And as I said, Mercury moving into Pisces is an important event, because when Mercury moves into Pisces, it's in the sign of Jupiter, and Jupiter's in Gemini. Mercury and Jupiter are in mutual reception, so that's really good. But just hold off, just for a day or two, and do respect your own space. Libra, the big event is Venus moving into Pisces. Venus is your ruler. And so if we want to understand what's going on in Libra's life, it's often a good idea to track Venus, to see what Venus is up to. And Venus has been in Aries, and Venus has been under quite a lot of pressure in Aries. You really felt that you might have been in the wrong place, not just because Venus was in Aries, the sign of its detriment, but also because Venus was retrograde and very close to the Sun. But Venus moving into Pisces, Venus is exalted in Pisces, and you feel more comfortable, even though you still feel pretty confused, because Venus is conjunct Neptune. You don't quite know what's going on, but you kind of feel that things are getting better. And so the question is, what do you do about the situation? And with Venus moving into Pisces, it's about doing what you can to make sense of it all, and avoiding anything, as far as is possible, that is complicated. So, certain complications cannot be avoided, especially with Venus conjunct Neptune. Some things are hidden. People may be hiding the truth, maybe deliberately, or maybe just because they're just being secretive for the sake of it. And for your part, make sense of what you can. And there are certain things that you can't do anything about. They remain in a state of chaos, and that's just the way it is. But there are areas that you can sort out and you can start to understand, and that is going to make things a lot easier for yourself. And also, it's important that you don't exaggerate a problem. So you might see something that doesn't make sense to you, and you think it's important, and you put a lot of effort into trying to make it work, and you might sort of panic. But Libra, you can't sort out everything, and you cannot have total clarity. I mean, it's great to have clarity, but you can't know everything. Some things are being kept hidden, and some things you know are being kept hidden. And that reminds us of that formula. If you know what you don't know, you're going to be okay. The problem is if you don't know what you don't know. But I do think that at the moment you do know what you don't know, and if you know where you are ignorant, then you've got choices. You can either find out about something in a very systematic way, or you can just accept it. Well, this is not an area you understand, so, well, you might as well steer clear of it, and you'll be fine. And additionally, with Venus moving into Pisces, you are becoming more sensitive, and your sensitivity allows you to get on better with people. People have been important with Venus moving through Aries, which is your opposite sign, but at the same time, you weren't able to fully relate to them. And with Venus moving into Pisces, it's just easier, and you have just a greater sensitivity, and also on an emotional level a greater awareness. And there is an understanding that some people can be of great help, but other people are just making a difficult situation even worse. And so, Libra, it's just a time for working out what you can work out, and if something is beyond your capabilities, you'll know about it, and you can leave it for later, or maybe you don't even have to leave it for later. You can just ignore it totally and perhaps let someone else deal with it at a later stage. Scorpio, it's great that the moon is moving through Pisces. I mean, Pisces is a sign that you understand very well because it's a water sign, and you are quite sensitive to what's happening around you, but sensitive not in a wishy-washy way. You just know. And also, Scorpio, with the moon moving through Pisces, you have a certain sense of fun, and you may be inclined to take a few things a little bit too far, because the moon is square Jupiter. So, what does that moon square Jupiter mean? Now, it could mean just enjoying yourself. That's what Jupiter can be about. Jupiter is a planet of enjoyment, and at its best, this moon square Jupiter might be about you enjoying yourself in a way that is actually very profound, and you can really get to the heart of a matter and find something that is really a part of your world, and it just feels real, and you just feel that you're in the right place. So that's one way in which moon square Jupiter could work. But Jupiter could work in a different way, and Jupiter may represent actually an irritation, because moon square Jupiter can be about exaggeration. Jupiter can attract your attention, but not necessarily in a good way. It's about something that you feel is not right, or it bothers you, and then you think about it again and it continues to bother you, and you start bothering yourself, and in the end you create a cycle of irritation, and you start to not enjoy yourself. So what could spoil the fun? And if something could spoil the fun, then maybe you should steer clear of it. Do you need that kind of negative distraction? I don't think right now you do. Additionally, today we have Venus moving into Pisces. So Venus has been in Aries. It retrogrades back into Pisces, and that may say something about other people and relationships, and it may be that you find that someone is coming back, or you see an old side to their personality, a side to their personality you've been missing. And so if you had a sort of a negative view of others, perhaps because of their recent behavior, don't jump to conclusions. And Venus moving back into Pisces may give you a chance to restore a relationship, or to perhaps get back to the way things used to be. And in general, with Venus moving into Pisces, surely that's got to make you feel better. And if you want to enjoy life with Venus moving into Pisces, with Venus conjunct Neptune in Pisces, if you do want to enjoy life, then there may be other people out there who can help you. Though this Venus conjunct Neptune, it is conjunct Skeet, and in certain cases that may say something about a person who is experiencing a real difficulty. This may not be someone you know well, but you just may come across a person who's got a story, or is even experiencing some kind of ongoing disaster, or some ongoing difficulty in their life. And with Mars making a square to Chiron, I've been talking about Mars square Chiron over the last couple of days. That Mars square Chiron is still very much there, and Mars square Chiron is quite a healing influence. And so if anyone is in trouble, perhaps that person being symbolized by Venus conjunct Neptune conjunct Skeet, if someone is in trouble, you do have an opportunity to make things better. So the healing side of Scorpio is very much present, if it needs to be activated. Sagittarius. There is a fair emphasis on Pisces now, because the moon is entering this sign, and additionally we've got Venus retrograding back out of Aries, out of a fire sign, into Pisces. So we thought that the Pisces season was over, but it's not. And as far as you're concerned, Sagittarius, with this emphasis in the sign Pisces, you may feel that your home is taking up a fair amount of your attention, and you do have to consider your family and your roots. And I've talked about all of this before, and it just goes on. Now, you should probably be quite happy about Venus moving back into Pisces, because it allows you to go over old ground. It may be that there are certain things that you thought you'd sorted out, of a sort of an emotional or security-based nature, and you now have another chance. So how grounded do you feel? How secure do you really feel? And I'm sure things are fine, but things could be even better. And with Venus moving into Pisces, it is retrograde, remember. That's an important point. But with Venus moving back into Pisces, you may be thinking about what things look like, and looking at your home and your living arrangements and the aesthetics, and Do things look beautiful? Do they look ugly? These are the kind of thoughts you might have with Venus moving back into Pisces. Now, your first inclination might be to do something about it. But, don't forget, Venus is moving retrograde. So when Venus is moving retrograde, it can change its mind quite quickly. So what seems beautiful now may not look quite so beautiful in a couple of weeks' time. So if you are having ideas about aesthetics, especially the aesthetics of your own home or the place where you feel most secure, might not be your own home. If you are feeling concerned about the aesthetics, don't rush to judgment, don't rush to action, because it may take time for you to work out what Venus is telling you. And additionally, Venus is making a conjunction to Neptune. So you're not quite sure what's going on, although with Venus conjunct Neptune, you are artistic, or certainly more artistic than usual, especially when you are somewhere safe and secure. So if you do have any artistic ability, you don't even have to have ability. We all apparently have some sense of the artistic, and so do what you can. Allow yourself to imagine. And additionally, Venus in Pisces, may say something about the people around you and the people who are right close to you. Look at what they're doing, look at what they're saying, look at what they're communicating. And with all this emphasis in Pisces, it's possibly not a time to be adventurous. I mean, you might try to be adventurous, but you're not going to feel too comfortable. And I should also point out that the moon is making a square to Jupiter, and that moon square Jupiter may indicate an irritation from another quarter. That may just be one person who is irritating, or it could be an obligation you feel that is kind of upsetting your peace of mind. You've told someone you'll do something, and you want to honor your promises. And, that's Sagittarius. If you say you're going to do something, you'll go and do it. But at the same time, Sagittarius is a mutable sign, so there can be changes of mind. And so with Moon square Jupiter, you might want to get out of an obligation. Can you get out of that obligation? I think you probably can, or at least you should be able to get some kind of postponement, and that might be a good idea, at least for the next couple of days. Capricorn, the moon is now very much in Pisces. It's making a square to Jupiter. I think that with the moon in Pisces, like yesterday, your ability to express yourself is going to be very good. You will be able to wax lyrical about a lot of different subjects. One doesn't normally associate Capricorn with waxing lyrical, but you can, and you always have a lot to say, and very often you hold back, but I don't think there's any great need to hold back. People want to hear what you've got to say. You can have an impact. And recently, I've talked a lot about your fundamental optimism, and this continues to be important because you can just say things that make other people happy, and you can present a different view of the world, a view of the world which is a great improvement on what we're currently having to deal with. Additionally, Capricorn, we have Venus moving into Pisces, and Venus is of course retrograde, and so it's possible that you may have a chance to get back to work on something which you had previously postponed. It might be the work had a social nature, trying to engage with people, get someone's support for something, get someone's attention. You might have given up, or you didn't think it was worth the effort. Now you can have another go. And if work and career are important to you, I think that Venus in Pisces could actually be very helpful, because Capricorn, it's going to make you more sensitive and more aware of what people and organizations are doing and what they want, and there's a good chance that you can actually provide what they want, and you can just work it out. And so you have a sensitivity that allows you to gain an advantage, not an unfair advantage. It's just, Venus in Pisces, Venus exalted in Pisces, and for you, Venus has a special relationship to work and career because Venus rules Libra, and Libra is the highest profile sign in your chart. So that does give you an advantage, and it perhaps allows you to continue with something that you'd given up on. Maybe you'd given up on getting in contact with someone who was important. You didn't get a reply, and if you didn't get a reply, well, now might be a time to try again, even though Mercury is retrograde. Mercury retrograde, we might think that when Mercury is retrograde, everything should grind to a halt, and we should postpone writing letters, we should postpone talking to people. Well, let's not exaggerate. And while it's true Mercury is retrograde, you're not a Gemini, you're not a Virgo, but Mercury doesn't rule your sign, and it certainly doesn't rule you. And so resending something, trying to get in touch one more time, might be a good exercise. And you never know what might happen. And I just think there might be something about your approach and your sense of timing that allows you to be successful and maybe to hit the bullseye. Aquarius, there's quite a lot of stuff going on in Pisces right now, and Pisces as a sign is linked with money. I mean, it's linked with money for you, and so money might seem a little boring, something you don't want to get involved with, but it might be worth your effort. I mean, this is of course something I have to point out. I mean, even if money is not important and it just seems, rather trivial, and there are other things going on, but Aquarius, at the moment, you just have a natural feeling for money and how money is being spent and how money can be earned and how money can be recovered, and just listen to those feelings and work out what you can do. And also Venus is moving into Pisces. Venus is exalted in Pisces, and that should further help you. And Venus might be conjunct Neptune, and with Venus conjunct Neptune, you may be able to get money or enrich yourself in a rather strange way. It's not like you actually planned on getting a particular amount of money, but you can somehow get there. It's almost like something is working on your behalf, but you're not consciously aware of how it's all happening. Now, the moon is moving through Pisces, but it's also making a square to Jupiter. And I've looked at money so far in terms of how you can make money or gain money, but when you've got stuff in Pisces, it can also be about losing money or spending money. And Moon square Jupiter is a somewhat excessive aspect, and you can take something too far. And It could be that you want something and you want to pay for it and you regard money as a means to an end. Or there might be something you want to do, something that's really important to you. And it's so important to you that you feel that it's worth spending a lot of money on making it happen. And I'm not convinced that that's the right approach. So if you feel a sudden temptation to spend money in order to get something that is important to you, then think again. There are many ways of getting what you want, and spending money isn't the only way. It's almost certainly not the best way. And moving away from money, there is a possibility that today there are sudden changes, sudden realizations. You had this yesterday, over the last couple of days. You have had an inclination to have these realizations, and something suddenly changes, and suddenly you want to do something. You didn't want to do it 5 minutes ago, but now you do want to do it. And that can be fun. Aquarius can be a fun sign after all, on its own terms though. You have a specific idea of what can be amusing, and maybe at the moment your sense of humour is on great form in your own way. Yeah, you have your particular ideas about what is amusing. And all this is good, but do consider the kind of impact you're having, because if you suddenly want to do something, then the world might not be quite ready for you. So perhaps you need to exercise a little bit of sensitivity. Pisces, you thought that the Pisces season was over, and it's not, because Venus is moving back into your sign. And so it's almost like a replay. And if you feel that you've missed any opportunities over the last few weeks, you thought you were going to do something, everything was lined up, you didn't get it together, well, maybe you get another chance. Now, the sun doesn't go retrograde, so the sun will not go back into Pisces, but as we've seen, Venus has already gone back into Pisces. Mercury is actually about to go back into Pisces. So it may be a time, Pisces, where you just have another chance. Perhaps we're talking about other people. Maybe there was something you wanted to say to someone, or there might have been someone who you were trying to gain their friendship, or get in touch with them for whatever reason, whatever reason. And you can, because Venus is moving back, and with Venus moving into Pisces, this says something about the way you are able to present yourself, and you are someone who is going to be increasingly engaging, attractive, and charismatic. And it hasn't even really started, because Mercury is still waiting to move into Pisces. And so do take advantage of it, and don't feel that you've missed any chance, because really you haven't. And one aspect we have today is a conjunction between Venus and Neptune. And Venus-Neptune conjunctions are difficult to define by definition, because Venus is covered in a cloud of fog represented by Neptune. And so you can present yourself in rather an unusual way, and you can keep a lot of things to yourself, and you can, in certain cases, be all things to all people. I mean, it can be dangerous being all things to all people. You can give the wrong impressions, but it can be useful, provided you have a very clear sense of where you want to go, and you don't actually destabilize yourself. And talking about destabilization, there is a square aspect between the Moon and Jupiter. So we've got Moon in Pisces, square Jupiter. And Jupiter is, of course, your ruler. And Jupiter, because it's in Gemini, it's about you trying to create a foundation for yourself. And there's some danger that you might trip yourself up. You might get caught up in your own illusions and delusions, and you're not quite sure how to present yourself. And yeah, it's nice being lots of different things to lots of different people, but you can fool yourself. And then when you fool yourself, you don't know where you are, you don't know where you're going, and you lose touch of your foundations. So really try very hard to be grounded. And you're not helped by the fact that there aren't any planets in Earth signs except for Uranus. So it's nice not to be fixed to any one place, not to be anchored. But if you're going everywhere and if you're just flowing with the tide, that's not such a good idea. I mean, you should be able to anchor yourself. You shouldn't forget that Saturn is still in Pisces, and Saturn in Pisces has helped tether you to something relatively secure, and you need to make the most of it. This Saturn in Pisces. Saturn's been in Pisces for the last couple of years, and hopefully now you are understanding the importance of secure grounding. And yeah, you're helped by the fact that Jupiter is in Gemini. But don't try to be too clever. Don't have too much variety today, because too much variety could actually be quite destabilizing. So that's it. Those are my forecasts for the 12 signs. And now I want to look at today from the viewpoint of the I Ching. So I asked the question, what is Thursday going to be like for those watching the I Ching section of this video? And the first hexagram I got was approach, number 19. And approach is quite a sociable hexagram. It's about getting closer to other people, as its name or its title implies. And it's not just about you taking the initiative, it's about other people taking the initiative as well. And there is a link between this hexagram and leadership. You may have something to offer, and people may rely on you. I mean, we are living in unstable times, and leadership is something that is valued, provided it's the right kind of leadership. We're talking about the leadership that is not about being a dictator, and it comes with fundamental humility, and it's about wise leadership. It's your wisdom and your awareness of your own flaws that can make you a powerful leader. So it's not about having an ego. That it's not that kind of leadership. We're talking about what is best for society, what is best for the people around you. They may not be sure about what's happening. You may not be sure about what's happening, but you have the wisdom to know what should and shouldn't be done. And there is a moving line. The fifth line moves. And the James Legge translation of the I Ching says about this line, it says, authority distrustful of itself. Authority distrustful of itself. Now, at first sight, that sounds problematic, authority distrustful of itself. But it's not meant like that. It's very good that authority is distrustful of itself. It is about humility. You do not trust yourself absolutely to make the right decisions. You know that you can make mistakes. And that makes you a better leader, doesn't it? because you know how you can make mistakes, so you're not going to take big risks. So I think that this hexagram 19 is fortunate because it allows you to know your own limits, and we see limits again cropping up when we consider the hexagram this moves to, because this hexagram 19, it transforms to hexagram 60, which is limitation. And limitation is the right approach. We know we can't achieve much. Okay, we know that we can achieve something, but we know that there are clear limits to it. And we know we need to be disciplined. We know other people need to be disciplined. And we can transmit this discipline to others, and they will listen. And it's not about telling people what they shouldn't do. Don't do this, don't do that. Because this hexagram limitation, it advises against galling limitation. That's limitation that's just painful. It really hurts, and you're not really benefiting from it. It's like, I'm not going to eat today. I'm going to fast today because it's good for me, and it really hurts, and I really want to eat, but I'm not going to eat. It's that kind of thing. So it's not about punishing yourself, and it's certainly not about punishing anyone else. It's about responsible leadership and knowing your own limitations, and also being aware of other people's limitations. And so it's not an exciting day, but I think it's a day when you can be of service to society. And even if you're not interacting with other people, you can get quite a lot done in a very sort of solid way. And now I want to talk about Neptune and what it means for Neptune moving into Aries. I probably shouldn't have tempted Neptune. Making this particular video that you're looking at, has been surprisingly difficult. Just things have been going wrong. I got some times wrong. I think that I got the times wrong when I was talking about the charts of Australia and New Zealand, and I had to start again, and I had to re-record, and it was a very small thing. It was just a really annoying thing. It just feels like Neptune was out to get me, and maybe Neptune doesn't want me to talk about it, and maybe I shouldn't talk about Neptune, but I'm going to talk about Neptune. And Neptune, it moves into Aries on Sunday, I think. Here's the chart for Neptune moving into Aries. Let's have a look. Here it is. On March the 30th, 2025, 1 p.m. London time. And it stays in Aries on and off for quite some time, until sort of 2038, 2039. And to be specific about it, so Neptune does go retrograde and direct. So 30th of March, Mercury moves into Aries. Then in October, October 22nd of this year, it moves back into Pisces. Then I think in January 26th of next year, it moves into Aries, and that's it. And so it's not like this is the last time that Neptune will be in Aries. Sorry, Neptune will be in Pisces for years and years. We do get this direct and retrograde dance, but this is the first time now that Neptune has been in Aries for well over a century, 150 something years. So how do we evaluate Neptune in Aries? So what is Neptune? So Neptune is an outer planet. It's a discovered planet. It's a collective planet. You could argue that a planet like Neptune doesn't really have much to do with individuals. I believe, for example, that you can interpret a chart for a person without needing to use Neptune. You might disagree with that, but from a traditional perspective, if you use Vedic astrology, you don't have to use Neptune. So it's a collective planet, and it can say something about the the collective unconscious. So Jung's idea that there is this unconscious that we're all connected to, and for example, there are shared symbols, and the collective unconscious can change. And one way in which we can gauge the changing of the collective unconscious is by looking at a planet like Neptune. As Neptune changes signs, things change, and priorities change. And Neptune is traditionally seen as being the planet of confusion. And so where are we confused? But I don't know if that's a particularly helpful way of looking at Neptune, at least in this context. It may just be that this big unconscious planet, this big collective planet, Neptune, is moving into Aries. And let's not worry too much about what Neptune means. And Neptune has a cycle of 165 years. And so, it comes back to where it was every 165 years. So yeah, it's slow moving. And the last time Neptune was in Aries was in the sort of 1860s and the early 1870s. So how do we work out what Neptune in Aries actually means? Well, one thing we can say about Neptune in Aries is that it's not in Pisces and that it's not in Taurus. So we know that since 2011, 2012, Neptune has been moving through Pisces. There's no doubt about that. And we have the ability to evaluate what was going on in the world since 2011 and 2012. So you could say that whatever has been going on since then may change. And this change, by the way, is especially important because Aries is a cardinal sign. It's, you've got the Aries point. Neptune's crossing the Aries point. If you take Aries as the first sign of the zodiac, it's kind of a new beginning. So we should try to conceptualize what Neptune in Pisces was about. Now, the problem about conceptualizing what Neptune in Pisces is about is prejudice. We all have our political views. Some people may think that what was going on with Neptune in Pisces was great. Others may feel that it's an absolute disaster, and there may be errors of judgment. So what I'm trying to do is provide you with a framework for working out what Neptune in Aries might be about. And so don't necessarily take what I say at face value. So when you look at what's going on between say 2011 and 2025, I'm giving you my prejudiced view. Ask yourself what those years were about. So if I were to look at that period between 2011 and 2012, and I look at it from a perspective of Neptune, and I do actually think it is important to see what Neptune is actually about. Neptune has been in Pisces. Neptune, in my opinion, does not rule Pisces. I believe that Jupiter rules Pisces, but I'm prepared to concede that Neptune has an association with the sign Pisces. And I also want to make it clear that Jupiter rules Pisces. Actually, you could say Neptune has been in a Jupiter-ruled sign. Now, one feature of Neptune in Pisces has, as far as I can see, been this association with fairness. Through the process of the Enlightenment, human beings have become more aware of each other's suffering and been aware of inequalities within society, and that's been good. But with Neptune in Pisces, you could say that it's gone a little bit too far. And so Neptune in Pisces, one of the hallmarks of the time since 2011, has been an increasing obsession with this concept of wokeness. Now, wokeness is a word that had an original meaning. I think that originally wokeness was about being aware of discrimination against African Americans and that sort of a slave culture and that still existed in the South, and being aware of the inequalities in society relating to race, and just being aware of them. And I think it was quite important to be woke. But this concept of wokeness has kind of expanded, and we have become very aware of other people to the extent where we might have lost touch of ourselves. And if anyone is expressing a grievance, then we have to take that grievance seriously, to the extent whereby we might have to abrogate ourselves. This concept in terms of race, I know, sorry if I'm talking about a somewhat controversial area, but critical race theory, white privilege, check your privilege, the whole concept of diversity. We've got to really take into account diversity. We've got to, in terms of hiring decisions, make sure that one has according to the diversity of our culture, and go further. It's often said that in media companies, in the UK, it's impossible to get a job if you're a white heterosexual male. Didn't they say that about the BBC? So that might be Neptune in Pisces getting out of control. And of course, with Neptune in Pisces, we've had this whole obsession with the transgender issues. There aren't many people in society who are transgender, but one has gone out of what society has gone out of its way in the West to cater for the transgender community, and to the extent of pronouns and issues with male prisoners deciding they want to change gender and going to female prisons even if they've been convicted of rape. This could be a Neptune in Pisces going out of control. And I don't think I need to say that much more about it, but it is about potentially destroying oneself in order to cater for other people. And there is a sense of self-sacrifice here. And again, this is a sort of dangerous subject matter for me, but if you look at immigration, I'm not giving my view on immigration, but there is a view that if you've got unfettered immigration, then it can destroy societies, like what is happening in Europe. This happened, it started with the compassion with Syria, when you had the Syrian civil war exploded, and you had all these Syrian refugees, 2015, 2016, flooding into Europe. I know one has to be careful using a word like flood, but if you're in Germany, for example, another million refugees, 2 million refugees, whatever it is, you could say that is Neptune in Pisces. And you can see Neptune in Pisces, those people holding these placards, what is it? Refugees are welcome here. I mean, that is a very Neptune in Pisces thing. We are going to take on people, we're not going to ask questions, and it's this general sense of sacrifice, and you can see it elsewhere. I think in California, calls for sort of reparations for slavery, that the descendants of slaves should potentially be paid millions of dollars as compensation. I'm not saying in a moral sense whether that's a good or a bad thing, but if you think about it from an economic and social sense, I think there could be a few problems with that idea. So this does give you an idea about Neptune in Pisces. And additionally, drugs. I've noticed with drugs, I think that, with drugs, you normally think about drugs and you think of heroin, and yeah, heroin seems to be, obviously a very dangerous drug. You know that, I don't know what the fatal dose of heroin is. It's quite low. It's I think off the top of my head, it's something like tens of milligrams. But since Neptune in Pisces has moved into Pisces, one has had the fentanyl epidemic, and fentanyl is in a completely different category from heroin. I mean, tiny amounts, less than a milligram, can kill you. And around here you see people just cars just stopping in the middle of the traffic, and the driver just sort of comatose with the engine running. This is what you see with fentanyl. And so the fentanyl obsession, of course, it's also an obsession. A lot of people are obsessed with fentanyl, and they see fentanyl as a reason why you need to close the borders. I don't quite get that. I mean, there may be reasons to close the borders, but fentanyl is such a powerful drug that one person with a backpack could, with a few kilos of fentanyl, that would be enough to provide America with all the fentanyl it needed for 1 year. It's because it's such a powerful drug. But why am I going on about Neptune in Pisces? Because I think that, to an extent, this is coming to an end with Neptune moving into Aries. And so from now until over the next year, as Neptune moves into Aries, things are going to change. That self-sacrifice connected with Neptune in Pisces is going to come to an end. I think, wokeness has already taken a big dive certainly since Donald Trump won the election. And Donald Trump is rolling back on diversity and diversity legislation and so on. And, people are complaining about it. People think this is really unfair. But once Neptune moves into Aries, things will change. And I suspect that there'll be less concern about transgender stuff, for example. It will possibly be seen as, something from the past. People have always been transgender, but I think that from a historical viewpoint, perhaps there weren't quite as many people who were closet trans historically as some people claim. It's easy to find one person who was trans historically in medieval England, or a couple of people. That doesn't mean to say that it was a broad trend. I don't think that's necessarily the case. So things are going to change with Neptune moving into Aries, and we can see Neptune in Aries just simply as not being Neptune in Pisces, and that might be the most straightforward way of looking at it. And it does seem that Donald Trump and his administration, whatever you think of him, he seems to be a bit of a harbinger of Neptune in Aries. And Neptune in Aries itself, I don't think that Neptune in Aries is going to be particularly spiritual or idealistic. It's Neptune in Aries. Aries is about being selfish. It's about wanting to do things one's own way. And that's not just selfish on a personal level, but also selfish on a national and a collective level. And traditionally, Aries is the warrior. And I think there is a warrior feel to Neptune in Aries, that people and societies that believe in themselves, that want to be successful, that are competitive, are the ones that are going to be successful. Societies that are broken, that are declining, are just going to get eaten for breakfast. So the weak will get weaker with Neptune moving through Aries, and the strong will get stronger. Now, that's a terrible message, but I think that's going to be the case. And I do think that there is some historical evidence for that. So, if you look at the last iteration, so when Neptune moved into Aries in the 1860s. So here's the chart. Here's Neptune moving into Aries. Moved Valentine's Day 1862 was when Neptune moved into Aries, and I've set that for London. So what was actually going on in the 1860s and early 1870s. So the 1860s, well, in Europe, there was a new kid on the block, and that was Germany. The 1860s was about the unification of Germany and a strong Prussia. I mean, I'm not an expert on German history, so I'm just looking at things in a very broad way. And the German Empire was declared in 1871. So here's a chart of the German Empire, January the 18th, 1871. I've gone for 1 o'clock in the afternoon in Versailles. And you can see that Neptune is in Aries. So it was a new country, Aries, Bismarck. Bismarck was, here's Bismarck's chart. Otto von Bismarck was an Aries, sun in Aries. And so he was very tuning into Neptune being in Aries. And so Germany had a sense of national unity. It all came together, and it started to dominate the continent of Europe. And of course, in 1870, you had the Franco-Prussian War, and the Franco-Prussian War, Germany won it. And so it was about having a sense of purpose. And also in Germany, you had, forgive the pronunciation, I think they call it the Kulturkampf, which was a struggle for education, a fight against the Catholic Church in Germany, because I think the Church had a lot of control over education. And in Germany, you wanted sort of one system, and it is about the German state and the establishment of the German state. And so if a country believes in itself, as Germany did in the 1860s and early 1870s, it can indeed be successful. And countries need to have some national sort of consciousness to have any chance of being successful. So if you look at the Franco-Prussian War, the Germans could have gone further, but the French started to fight back. And I think there's this concept in France of lever en masse. So France realized that in order to defeat the Germans, or at least to hold the Germans back, it wasn't just about their army, they had about the army as it existed. They had to mobilize the whole population. And you could say that as soon as Germany realized that the whole of the French population was mobilizing, there was a limit. Okay, they took Alsace, but that's how you succeed. You have to have national awareness, national consciousness. You have to believe in yourself as a country. And with Neptune in Aries, this is going to be really important. And, if you go back further to sort of an earlier iteration, so from 1697 to 1711, you had Neptune moving through Aries. And this was the wars. You had two wars. You had you had probably had more wars than that. You had the Wars of the Spanish Succession, and additionally you had the Great Northern Wars between, I think, Russia and Sweden, and various alliances between, was it 1700 to 1720? And, the Wars of the Spanish Succession, without wanting to get into details, but some empires prospered, and other empires declined. And, the Dutch Empire had reached its peak. I think the Spanish Empire was, clearly things weren't things weren't going very well. It was a plus for Britain, and so empires change, and countries that want to push themselves, they can. And Russia had a war with Sweden. It won some battles, it lost some battles, but the Battle of Poltava was the Battle of Poltava, I think, when Peter the Great defeated the Swedes. So here's a chart for the Battle of Poltava, and that was on I think July the 8th, 1709, when Neptune was in Aries. So this is about empires asserting themselves and also empires going into decline. And so when you see Neptune in Aries, you might be asking, who are the winners? Who are the losers? And countries that have a belief in themselves, that have strong leadership, are the ones that are going to triumph. Again, it's not a very nice message. You can go further. If you look at the 14th century, 1370, around then, Neptune was in Aries, and what's his name, Tamerlane, this incredibly powerful Asian leader who was, he was originally came from the sort of the Mongol invasion, and he sort of dominated Central Asia, and went further into I think into the Middle East, and he really he became the Amir when Neptune was in Aries. And so this is what Neptune in Aries is about. And so in terms of what we're going to see in terms of international politics and who's going to win, who's going to lose, anyone who is sort of idealistic and believes that they should be looking after other people, self-sacrifice, it's not going to work. And you're going to get new countries on the block, new countries that have total belief in themselves. Obviously, they're not new countries, they're existing countries, but we're going to see countries that we'd taken for granted as just being there. And for example, the UK. The UK has been suffering from a prolonged period of self-loathing. Okay, it might have the sort of the remnants of empire, like being a permanent member of the Security Council, but there is a fundamental weakness to the UK at the moment. For example, Keir Starmer wanting to give away the Chagos Islands, and also, being in hoc to the European Court of Human Rights, and this sort of idea of undermining the UK. If you take that attitude, and if you continue with that attitude, you will get destroyed. And so it is quite possible that unless the UK gets itself together very quickly with Neptune in Aries, then it's going to get wiped out. I mean, not literally wiped out, but it could very much take a real hit. And I think that could well happen, and people will realise that this is the end. The British Empire is finally gone. It's no longer a player of any importance on the international stage, because other countries will take over. Countries that have a complete sense of purpose. Now, I don't know, is that going to be Germany again? Doesn't look like it. Germany would have to get itself together. I suppose Neptune has just gone into Aries, but Germany, France are countries of Western Europe. I mean, Macron is trying, but any European country that wants to survive is going to have to completely believe in itself. And Neptune in Aries is not about following international agreements. Oh, we can't do this because of the European Court of Human Rights. We can't do this because we're in the EU. And so the whole concept of the European Union is possibly antithetical to the idea of Neptune in Aries. And certain countries within the European Union are going to want to assert themselves. And by the time Neptune moves into Taurus, we may find that certainly in Europe, there are going to be countries that we didn't expect to be so powerful. My hunch would be, because I think that power is moving to the east, is that a country like Poland is going to be in a much, much stronger position by the 2030s than it is now. I mean, look out for Poland. Poland might well be the dominant player in Europe, amazing as that might sound, because it keeps in mind its national interest. Any country that wants to be successful must look after its national interest. Otherwise, it is doomed. And that is certainly the lesson of the 1860s and 1870s. And if we go back to the 1860s, it's all about the nation. And looking at British politics in the 1860s and early 1870s, well, particularly the 1860s, the Conservative government or the Conservative Party had this concept of one nation conservatism. So again, one nation. That is a very Neptune Aries idea. So Benjamin Disraeli had worked out this idea of one nation, of a one nation approach, before Neptune went into Aries. He'd written books beforehand. I think he wrote a book called Sibyl where he talked about it. But when Neptune Aries, the concept of one nation conservatism became an important political theme. And that is very Neptune in Aries. That's how you want to be successful. You have to have a nation that believes in itself, where everyone is looked after. There's a paternalistic idea to Neptune in Aries as well, perhaps, with this one nation conservatism. And in 1867, when Neptune was in Aries, you had a reform bill. So if you've ever had the misfortune to study 19th century British politics, it's really boring. I just don't go down that road. I did an A-level in politics, and I had to do British politics, and I spent the whole year was just reading Acts of Parliament. You had this book with factory laws, poor laws, how children should be looked after, and it went on and on and on. And you had the reform bills as well. You had the 1832 reform bill, which was much heralded as the increasing the franchise. Supposedly more people could vote with the 1832 reform bill, but it didn't actually do much. It was still a very elite thing to do, to vote. You needed to own property and so forth. But it was the 1867 reform bill that really expanded the franchise, when ordinary sort of working people in Britain genuinely had the vote. And that, in a way, is a Neptune and Aries thing. And I'm sort of reminded of one of the Labour, was it a campaign promise, was saying that we were going to give votes to the 16-year-olds, or even people talking about giving votes to EU citizens. And given the fact that in Britain, while Neptune in Aries, there was a big expansion of the franchise in terms of voting, it is quite possible with Neptune in Aries that the Labour government may feel that giving votes to 16-year-olds, or even giving votes to European EU citizens, might be a good way of keeping themselves in power. Though you have to be careful what you wish for. Are 16-year-olds really going to vote Labour? Not necessarily. So giving votes to 16-year-olds is not necessarily going to give Labour an election victory next time round. I haven't been following how that policy has been running. So that might be something to look at with Neptune in Aries. And one event that did happen with Neptune in Aries, as Neptune moved into Aries, if we go back to the 1860s, then of course the American Civil War. The American Civil War started with Neptune in Pisces, but by 1862, Neptune was in Aries. And this might say something about the Civil War. So Neptune in Pisces was about the absolutely justified sense of outrage about slavery and feeling that this was fundamentally wrong. That is Neptune in Pisces working well in the build-up to the Civil War. And then the Civil War happens and Neptune moves into Aries, and it just becomes a war. Neptune in Aries is about the warrior. And there was a point, of course, when the Union victory was inevitable. Now, I tried to work out at what point the Union victory was inevitable. I'm not going to go and argue about the Civil War, because there are people in America that just know so much about the Civil War, and they've all got their views, and I don't know much about the Civil War, but there is a view that the Union was always going to win. There is another view that the Confederacy could have won as late as 1864. I haven't a clue, but also with Neptune Aries, the Civil War was the first industrialized war. It was real war, and it was about winners and losers. And of course, one is reminded of the Ukrainian war, which started when Neptune was in Pisces. And you think about all of the ideals going on in the West, and that might be one aspect of Neptune moving through Neptune moving through Pisces, that you don't actually want to look at the facts. And it's not just about Ukraine, it's just about anything. People just believe in what they believe in. The truth is relative. That's very much a Neptune in Pisces sense. With Neptune in Aries, it's real now. And with the war in Ukraine, you think about all the idealism in Western Europe. Everyone really believed in the Ukrainian case and wanted to help the refugees from Ukraine. Neptune in Pisces, but Neptune is starting to move out of Pisces now, and it's going to move into Aries. And so when you get Neptune in Aries, you're going to get winners and losers. And the question is, does Russia have a strong sense of national identity, and does it really want to win? And I suspect that Neptune in Aries will represent a real turning point in the war in terms of how it works out. And it may all be about Russia wanting to win. And if Russia wants to win, it has an idea about what it wants, then it can be successful. And that is a way of looking at it. And it's kind of interesting that, Neptune Aries, you had the Great Northern War, and you had Russia winning the Battle of Poltava in 1709. Of course, Poltava is in modern-day Ukraine, and now Neptune is back in Aries. And I've already discussed my view on Russia, that with the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in 2020, the end of 2020, that did indicate a real resurgence of Russia. I do think that the next couple of decades are Russia's time, and Neptune in Aries would support that. And finishing up with America, you might not like Trump and his tariffs and putting America first, but this is Neptune in Aries behavior. This is how you behave if you want to be successful with Neptune in Aries. With Neptune in Aries, so it could be that when Neptune moves into Aries, Trump starts to make sense. I'm not saying, by the way, I'm not saying I agree with Trump. I'm obviously not saying it. I'm trying to be objective here. But he is in accordance potentially with the times in which we are living. And Neptune in Aries may actually work in Trump's favor. So countries that look after their own interests are the ones that are going to be successful. Now, one of the great tragedies of Neptune in Aries is probably going to be the environment. We're already seeing people concerned about, the net zero, it's not going to work. And in Neptune Aries, I can do what I like. whatever is needed. I don't need to care about the environment with Neptune in Aries. And I think that we're going to see environmental destruction. People are just going to forget about, all this stuff about climate change and environment, destroying wetlands. Do what you like, because I have to think about myself. I have to think about what I need to do now, and countries will have to do the same thing. We need to think about affordable housing, and we must destroy whatever we need to destroy because we need to think about the present. That is a very Aries attitude, and that will continue, I think, I'm afraid, and it will continue until Neptune moves into Taurus. Now, that's 2038 and 2039, and as I said about Neptune in Aries, it is not just about Aries, it's about Neptune not being in Pisces anymore, and it's about it not being in Taurus. When Neptune goes into Taurus, that's when the environment is going to become really important. The compassion for the environment will, I think, be extreme. People will realize how much damage has been done when Neptune was in Aries. And so that is a change. I would say, is it something to look forward to? Yeah, I suppose in a way it's something to look forward to. But, how much damage will have been done to the environment through the selfishness of Neptune in Aries, putting oneself first, one's constituents first, one's country first, and in 2038 and onwards, that's when I think people will really start to understand the environment and perhaps realize that we all are just animals. There's nothing special about us being humans. We're not a special species, and we might go back to that sense of self-sacrifice. And don't think Pisces has gone away forever, by the way, with Neptune moving out of Pisces, because soon enough, Pluto will be moving into Pisces. So this might actually be an aberration. And a lot of this sense of self-sacrifice of Neptune and Pisces may come back in a couple of decades' time when we have Pluto in Pisces. So those are a few thoughts on Neptune in Aries. It's just ideas. I'm not saying that's the way it's going to be, and it's quite a difficult thing to try to put everything together. And I'm sorry if I've offended anyone. I've tried to be objective. I'm not saying this is what I believe in, but I think we do get some hints about what Neptune in Aries is about. So, thank you very much for watching. If you did enjoy this video, I'd be very grateful if you were to like it. If you're not subscribed, I'd be super grateful if you were to subscribe. If you want to buy me a coffee, there is a link in the description, and I will talk to you again tomorrow.